Hello, everybody, and welcome to Winning Fever, let alone four-tier fever. I'm getting a bit carried away already. I need to just maybe take that calm it down a little bit. But I've loving life. Town have won 3 in a row, 2 away wins in a row. We'll touch on a little bit that as well as some other games. Couple of mad scorelines. I'd say, particularly if you're an MK Dons fan, which Luke is here. I can imagine he's pretty happy with result. How's things?
Oh, yeah, no, things are great. I don't think we need to tone things down at all. I mean, Lindsay Ball is here. That's all I need to say. Life is great.
I'll tell Ball Claire. Someone who I assume is, well, not happy. Having a read through his messages last night in which he stated some of the words like he was raging like a volcano were a couple of things. We've got Jake. Do you feel any better today after last night?
To be fair, I think I've calmed down slightly, but I was fuming yesterday, but I'm sure I'll get onto it.
Yeah, it's a shame we don't have Kieran because obviously Salford played Newport and he was loving life as much as me and Luke were with last night's results. So we'll go through it. We'll probably do it. I did speak to obviously these two before, and we do go a little bit in detail. Some of them, I think, some of them we'll sort of just calm it down a little bit. We'll obviously just touch on our clubs and some of the more key talking points. But I think we have to start at the Priestfield Stadium. Gillingham. We've been high praise of Gillingham for the last couple of weeks. They've been scoring goals, winning matches, conceding very little. They've been enjoying life at the right top end of the table so far this season. And we've stated that they look like a real force, and they've got plenty of threats going around the team. And they've got Mark Bonner, of course, who has won promotion out of this division before with Cambridge. One thing to point out as well, they've had a really good. They've had really good home form. They haven't lost at home in the calendar year of 2024. And then came David Artell's Grimsby Town to piss right all over their chips. The Mariners winning 1-0 away from home. Kieran Green with it. It's not a classic game. It wasn't a classic game, to say the least. I did watch it at home. Wasn't able to get down there. Certainly wasn't a classic game, but to a man, we were absolutely outstanding from minute 1 to minute 90. We took our goal really well. I really recommend you look at the goal. The way we just go from back to front, from the goalkeeper to the fence. Denver Hume, unbelievable again to find that ball to Kieran Green. It's a striker's finish for that one. And we limited what is a very strong Gillingham side to very little. I don't think we brought in Jackson Smith on a 7-day emergency loan, obviously with the 2 goalkeepers being out injured at the moment, and he didn't really have anything of note to do. He looked really tidy for what he did do. But I mean, I could go through pretty much everyone in that team. Denver Hume, the defensive pairing of Cam Janet and Harvey Rogers, unbelievable yesterday. Cass put in another shift. Evan Corey, I feel like I've not praised Evan Corey enough on this podcast. He is a player that is growing in confidence week by week. And I'm really glad he's now getting the minutes that he deserves. I've always seen something in Ev, but he's really stepped up another gear. What's he, 21 years old? He's got bags of potential. I really do believe that. George McEachran looks to be, one of the signings of the window. So cool, calm, just really composed on the ball. It sticks to him at times. Kieran Green, don't know what's happened to him. The bloke's a fucking steam train now compared to what it was. You'd never get anything less than 100% with Greeny. I've always felt maybe if he lacked that little bit of quality to maybe be a League 2 player, if I'm going to be honest. But this season, we've pushed him further up, and my God, he has absolutely excelled. And it's great. And then the front line, Barrington didn't stop working all night. Neither did Van Thorson. He might be a little bit disappointed that maybe he didn't really get as much of the ball as I like, but he worked his absolute socks off. And Danny Rose, I feel like every week, if it's not on here, it's to my mates that I'm praising Danny Rose. What a player! The bloke just doesn't stop running. He just gives everything. Honestly, to a man, absolutely unbelievable. I'd probably go as far to say that is our best performance for 2-3 years. I generally think it was that good. We were absolutely exceptional. I mean, Gillingham they had more of the ball, they had more of the chances, but they could have probably played until Jackson Smith's loan spell. At the by next Tuesday, I still don't think they'd have scored. It was generally a really good night, and it's really pleasing as well. Back-to-back away wins, which has been few and far for us. Another clean sheet. A pleasing thing. And I'm really glad now that people are starting to see that we've actually got something going here with David Artell. The fact it's maybe taking three wins on the trot. The first time that's happened since February 2019, by the way, since we've won 3 in a row. You can see what we're trying to do. It's not going to be perfect every week, of course not, but you've got to, I think people are starting to realise that I think we've got something special going on here. It just needs time. It just needs a little bit of patience. And yeah, I'm really pleased. Doncaster on Saturday is another tough one. It's got Harry Clifton 90th minute winner written all over it, and then we've got a nice easy game the week after when we go to Salford. So good times at the minute. I expected a little bit more from Gillingham, but I think it's mainly credit to us was to how excellent we were, sort of. Well, everywhere really. We generally didn't give him a sniff at all. I didn't see it coming either. I'd have snapped your hand off for a point, let alone 3. So, really, really pleased. Did you see this one coming, Luke?
Gotta be honest, I kind of just assumed this would be routine win for Gillingham. Just as you were, like nothing to shout about. And I mean, how wrong was I? This was an outstanding result. There's no other way of putting it. Patience is a virtue both on the pitch and off of it, and you're starting to see the fruits of the labour of Artell's side. And that's one highlight. And obviously the trick is maintaining that level. And obviously some weeks, as you say, that's not going to happen. But it does show that team has a certain level of belief in their own ability, and that's enough to carry you towards the right end of the table.
Yeah, and I think there just seems to be a real bit of togetherness, something that we just didn't see last year. All I ask for a town side is for us just put a little bit of effort, and just show that little bit of quality. There weren't many players that could come away from last season with their heads held high. This year, I think already, there's a real togetherness. We've got a group of players that are really buying into what we're trying to do in difficult circumstances as well. I don't think, as it's been mentioned, we have had a hell of a lot of injuries, and I think we've dealt with them exceptionally. I think we've got a couple to come back, hopefully, at the weekend. But I think that just makes it even more impressive, if I'm going to be honest. It's just great to see. But yeah, like I said, we just got to stick with it. I hope for the fact that, if we go and lose the game, the Artell brigade come out again. That's the last thing that we need. I mean, I don't really care at this point. I am backing him to the hills. I see what we're trying to do. It's an identity I've not seen for the club for quite a while, and yeah, it's working. You can see what we're trying to do. Just a quick word on Gillingham, Jake. I mean, I just think it's an off night. That's what the impression I got from that. Is that something that you maybe think?
Yeah, it looks like an off night. They've only lost once before, and the last time they lost, they won 3 in a bounce. So, but they've only conceded 2 goals before yesterday, so it's clearly just an off day, and I'm sure they've got Crew next, so they'll probably bounce back fine.
Yeah, and they've got a good opportunity there too as well. That's a Crew side that, didn't play yesterday. They were one of the games that didn't play, in which they should have gone to AFC Wimbledon. Who only lost 1-0 to Newcastle, I think I saw. I think it was from a penalty, so that's not a bad result for them. But I mean, they've got the quality there. But like I say, I just think we did a hell of a job on them. So yeah, really pleased. We'll move on. I wanted to touch on. I mean, Walsall have started the season really well. Quite a few wins. They're scoring goals. They came up against a Fleetwood side yesterday. I thought this would be a pretty decent game, if I'm going to be honest. For some reason, I thought Fleetwood would nick it. I certainly thought they would at the start of the game. I didn't think they'd win 6-2 though. I mean, I think Walsall were winning first half. They were 2-1 up. And then second half, it just seems like they absolutely imploded. I don't really know what to say. I mean, I've always seen something in Fleetwood. I think it's just more of the case of, I think they've been quite unlucky with a few results, but I think there's been times in which I think they could have managed games a little bit better, in which it's cost them a few points. But I truly believe, on paper, they've got one of the best squads in the division. We've had this discussion about Charlie Adam at the start of the campaign. Wasn't entirely too sure, if I was going to be honest, but there's certainly loads of foundations there for a good team like Coughlin, Matty Virtue, Mark Helm is another good one. Danny Mayer, I believe, is tearing it up for them as well. I mean, Danny Mayer's a class player. What do you see about Fleetwood at the minute in which you could maybe think they could have a successful season? Because at the minute, I do see quite a lot of things that can. I think there's a couple of things that need to be tweaked, but I don't think there's a reason why they can't be up there.
Yeah, they've got a lot of goals from all over the pitch. With like Matty Virtue's got a load of goals now. All of them just runs into the box, which seems to be going unmarked, which is strange from the opposition. And then obviously their young centre back got 2 goals yesterday, which is incredible for him. So they're just going under the radar. They've got goals from everywhere. They look pretty solid going defensively. So they just need to keep ticking along. They've got Bromley next. So that's going to be a really tough game and sort of an interesting one to see how it goes. Obviously they're a completely different side. So really intriguing to see.
Yeah, it's a tough game. And I think also a winnable one. I think it's a good time to play Bromley. With them being very out of form, although from looking at the Hearts, I saw at Bromley, they look like the Bromley I expect them to be, but we'll touch on them a little bit more in a bit. For Walsall, we know the start of the season well. I think they're still third at the minute, which is still a very good start. They scored 17 goals, which is, I believe, the joint most with Notts County, which, I mean, it's one stat that's taken me by surprise. I didn't, as I've said a few times, I didn't see that many goals in this Walsall team, but they are clicking it together in front of goals. But the 6 conceded yesterday. I mean, they've conceded 10 throughout the whole season. They conceded 6 yesterday. Is it more of a case of it's probably a bit of a reality check?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you look at the way that game's gone. They've gone ahead twice in that game, and not only have they lost it, but they've conceded 6 at home in the process. I mean, and that's not acceptable on any level if you have any aspirations at all to do well in a season. And, I mean, you look at the defending for all 6 goals, really, it was scrappy, it was unorganised, that there just wasn't much control there for a side that has been performing. You would have expected more. And then by the time it got to that final goal, I mean, the goalkeeping from Simkin, I'm sorry, but that is pathetic. It's straight at you and you've just let it roll in.
It's just gone straight under him, isn't it?
Well, yeah, there was no reason for that to go in. But as you say, it is a reality check, and I'm sure they'll bounce back from it. And that is kind of how it goes. You're not going to win all 46 games, but it's how you react to when you lose a game, especially in that sort of fashion.
Yeah, of course. I think it's the fact that they were also winning at half-time as well. So it did take me by surprise a little bit, seeing, 2-2, 3-2, 4-2, 5-2, and then eventually 6-2. I thought a couple of the goals in particular were very poor. Like you pointed out, that last one, there was one, I can't remember if it was Walsall or Fleetwood, but it was one really scrappy one. I mean, I think both. I think there were instances in which both teams scored a scrappy goal. I can't quite remember at the top of my head. But it's quite an alarming, I think, that second half match performance for them to be 2-1 up and to then to go and concede 5 goals at home to Fleetwood, in which, like I said, I think have real quality in their squad. But you can't be doing that at home. You just can't. I think it certainly, I won't say puts them in their place a little bit, because that just sounds like nasty. That just sounds really nasty. But it's more of a little bit of an eye opener. I think maybe sort of where Walsall, I think maybe should, but I don't know. It sounds harsh with the start they've had, but they're a side that are very capable. But it certainly brought a few alarm bells. I think that second half performance, particularly, really good result for Fleetwood though. I think they've got Chesterfield next. Do Walsall. That's a tricky one at the minute. It looks like a Chesterfield side who are picking up a couple of results at the minute. So we'll see how they bounce back with that one. But good win for Fleetwood, as suggested. We better touch on MK Dons, haven't we? Scott Lindsay's second game in charge, drew with Bromley in his first the other day. Another away game to trip up to Yorkshire to play Harrogate, and 5-1 winners for the Dons. Talk us through it, Luke. I mean, how pleased were you for that?
Well, I mean, for a start, that first half, that is the best half of football we have seen in a long time. There was so much control. It was the out of possession stuff that really impresses me. I said that against Bromley as well, but we saw it on another level this time around. You had all four midfield players pressing. They'd take it in turns. So although you had two holding midfielders, two attacking ones, they would take it in shifts. So there was a relentless press constantly. Harrogate were never given a chance to settle. And of course, when they went long, sure, we probably won't necessarily win the first ball, but you can be sure we're having the second one. And, I don't think they ever really got out of their half in the first half, to be honest. And eventually we were able to sort of put 3 goals past them, which is, ideal situation. And to be fair to Harrogate, they came out second half with much more fight. And they did put us under a bit of pressure. They didn't create all that much. I think the chances they did have, their shots were feeble, to be honest. McGill had it pretty easy most of the time. In fact, the only time he was beaten was when Luke Offord decided to shoot at his own goal, or rather flick it backwards towards our own goal. So sadly, can't blame MJ. Wasn't even on the pitch.
Can't even have that this week.
He had a cameo appearance at the end. He did play well. Fair play to him.
Oh my God! Did I just say that right? Oh,
but no, and then eventually we made the subs, and eventually we stepped it up again. A couple more goals. That fourth goal was outstanding from start to finish. Just the pure technical ability of Tom Carroll and Sonny Finch, who I don't know how he didn't score that chance in the first place, to be honest, but we've managed to recover it, and Lemonhay Evans has finished off the move instead. And then Finch got his goal with the fifth, which he definitely deserved. He had a couple of chances earlier on. And I think the promising thing for me is it's 5 different scorers when we've been struggling to score without our strikers, essentially. We've had Hendry missing. We've got Harrison missing for another game with suspension. But it finally looks like we've got goals in the team, and there's creativity, and there's freedom of choice as well. The players have more control and are allowed to express themselves. I think that's what we're really seeing with Lindsay Ball.
Yeah, I mean, I've always stated that it was a really good appointment, and I've always felt confident that I think MK would probably appoint someone like Lindsay, and they certainly have done. You've mentioned that Harrogate goal, it was a bit messy. I think it's probably safe to say, but just looking at a few of the MK Dons goals, sorry, just a couple of nice passes in play in there, some good finishes at times. I mean, I did quite like that one that hit the post and just fell straight to the man. It sort of looked very FIFA, that goal. It was quite amusing, but you stated about. I mean, you stated that MK, they've had their struggles, particularly on the road, at times this season, but and that's a good one as far as I'm concerned. But it brings my point to Harrogate from the last few pods to even more to light. They're just very inconsistent. I know that. Obviously, I still expect MK Dons to turn it on. I really do, and I've always had that. I've always had that feeling. But there's something about Harrogate. I mean, look, they're not the biggest side in the league. That's safe to say. They're not the biggest team in the world. They've not got probably the best players. They're a pretty stable League Two side. But it's just the fact that they'd go and beat someone like Bradford and Doncaster, and then they just fall to defeat to someone like Crewe, and then to MK Dons. It probably wouldn't have been bad if they'd have lost. The fact they lost 5-1, I think is quite poor. Quite if we're going to be honest, especially at home. But MK took their goals really well. Is that maybe something you agree with on Harrogate, Jake? I mean, you just see them they're very capable of picking up a very good result, but there's always been times in which it doesn't happen frequently enough, and yet they just fall to a really poor result.
Yeah, it's really hard to actually know what to make of him so far this season, because you see him get some results and you think, okay, maybe they can push on and have a good season, and then they go and concede 5 goals to MK Dons, which, yes, you expect them to lose to MK Dons, but not in that manner. And especially some of the goals they conceded that we're disappointed with. So they've got Swindon next, which is almost a must-win in a way. And if they win that, then potentially you could be having the same conversation of will they push on again.
Yeah, I think that Swindon game's actually quite big, although Harrogate are in a slightly better position than Swindon. It's probably safe to say, but we'll have to see what happens with that one. Chances are, I fully expect Harrogate to win. That's just how it is, and I won't be surprised. I think it's just more from them than Swindon at the minute, in which we'll probably touch on now. Actually, we'll touch on Swindon, Tranmere 1-1. I don't think many people predicted this game to be a classic. Tranmere struggling to score goals. They did score. Which was probably a surprise. I think they went the whole calendar month of September without scoring, which is pretty mad. Christian Dennis actually got it, who can get goals in this division. Whether frequently enough, I don't know. And then, to be honest, second half, I mean, it was a Chris Merry own goal, and it looked a bit of a. Yeah, I think it took a couple of deflections, and it sort of just looked. I can't remember, if I'm going to be honest. It's something I will look up. I'll look back on actually just now, and I'll let you know there. But Swindon again. I mean, we always knew that. I mean, Tranmere looked like they've been quite solid defensively. Probably not been last couple of games, although they have played some pretty decent teams. But Swindon, one win this season so far. As much as Tranmere have not had the best of starts with their goal scoring fortunes, it did. I felt that it actually looked like a pretty decent opportunity for Swindon to go and pick up some points. And again, they have picked up a point, but not 3. I don't know where to go with Swindon at the minute. Do you?
Yeah, no, they're a really tricky one. We said it at the weekend. Every side wants to play them, and obviously Tranmere haven't taken full advantage, and they've only got a point as well. But for Swindon, it is a chance wasted against a side that don't really score, and you've let them score in 17 minutes. I mean, having that uphill climb like from that early on, it's never a good sign, and ultimately. They haven't even scored the goal themselves. They've relied on the goal. And I mean, I'm looking at the stats here. You've got 16 shots and 2 on target. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Tranmere not much better, 14 and 3 on target. That's between both sides. That's 1 shot on target out of 6. That's 2 sides that really just cannot attack at all. And I mean, for both sides, it was a chance, and both of them have wasted it. They're like. Yeah, there's not many positives to take from that, really, at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking back at the goal now. I wanted to just see the own goal back again. The Tranmere goal looked a little bit messy, but it's sort of just taking it around like the play, and then there's just sort of coming. Yeah, it's if anything, it's Merry's as a diving header that into his own net, which is even worse actually. I thought I took a couple of maybe deflections, but no, that's poor actually from a Tranmere perspective. But yeah, as you've alluded to, the fact that they've not even had a goal scorer themselves that night is quite alarming. I feel. I mean, like I said, I think Tranmere built on a pretty solid defence. Someone just walked into Jake's room, I think. But it's from one thing I have noticed with Swindon, though, their next couple of games, we've mentioned that they've got Harrogate next. And after that, in the league, they've got Cheltenham. I think already those are 2 huge games for them. I think they're huge for Mark Kennedy as well. We had this discussion the other day. I think the problems do run deeper at Swindon. But ultimately, in terms of the football side of things, he's the one that will take the most flack because he's the manager. And it doesn't sound like he's that loved over there at the minute amongst Swindon fans. I see these next 2 games as potentially opportunities for him to save his job. If I'm going to be honest, I think if they don't get 4 points from that minimum, I think there's a big problem because their teams around them sort of not in the same situation in terms of on the pitch. Obviously, problems off the pitch. In fact, no, that's probably harsh to say. Teams around them is probably a bit of a better word better words to say. I just think these next two are massive for them. Quickly on Tranmere, we know that they had their goal scoring issues, a bit like Salford, as we're going to touch on, Jake. But Tranmere's an interesting one. Like I said on the pod the other day, I don't see many players in that team that can go and get a hat full of goals. I don't really see much creativity in that side. The only one I pointed out that looked like that could really do something for Tranmere was Amari Patrick. I'm struggling to see much from the others. I think they've been really underwhelming this year so far, and I think it might get a little bit worse before it gets better. If I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure what you think.
Yeah, I completely agree, because obviously I saw them on Friday and they just didn't look like they had anything going forward, and neither did we, obviously. But their fans were quite critical of Nigel Adkins as well, I've seen, because there doesn't seem to be a plan B. It just seems to be hit and hope and sort of see what comes off that, but usually nothing comes off when they go long. Obviously, as you'd expect, they are tight defensively and they haven't conceded many. So they just need to get that goal score, and I just don't see them having one.
Yeah, they're just not. I say entertaining because ultimately it's a results-driven business. You know, fans are happier with points, but I'm struggling to see ways in which they're trying to get loads at the minute. I know they picked up one yesterday, but I mean, you could build your foundations on a solid defence all you like. Ultimately, goals wins your games. I sound like a little bit like Michael Owen, but that's just how it is. And that's something that Tranmere are not doing a lot of at the minute, and I can't see them doing a lot. If I'm going to be honest, I'm really disappointed actually with the start. There's still obviously time to turn it around, but I expect to look so far a little bit more from Tranmere. I think how they had their second half of last season, where they looked like a pretty strong team. I didn't think they needed much doing. Is there maybe a couple of shots with their ownership, trying to maybe invest a little bit more. I don't know, but if we're just looking at the football side of things, I mean, I like my Nigel Adkins, but it's certainly not a good look at the minute. If I'm going to be honest, we'll touch on one more game before we go to a break. I wanted to touch on Morecambe. They've been quite unlucky, I think, last couple of weeks. 3 draws in a row. They should have beaten Notts County at the weekend. I mean, we said it on the pod. I mean, I don't know how the line though, has not seen that ball. I think it's crossed the line, if I'm going to be honest. I certainly got the impression that first win is coming after, a difficult start to the season, I think it's safe to say. And if I'm going to be honest, I thought it would have come to last night, playing Bradford. A great time to play Bradford anyway. But it's a sort of fixture in which Bradford just pull off an absolute stinker. And it very nearly looked to be the case. They've conceded late, Morecambe, and I think that's really unjust because it looked like I think Morecambe deserved to win. They scored early again, Morecambe, albeit an own goal. It was a bit of a mess from Diabate, I believe it was. But a good header from Shepherd to get a point out of that. But I only think that papers a few cracks for Bradford. They've not had the best of time at the minute, especially away from home. But I don't know what more to say. I mean, the effort's there for Morecambe. They've just been really unlucky, haven't they? Is that something you think?
Oh, yeah, no, they've been unlucky in some capacity, but I am a little bit disappointed in them for this one because, I mean, it was a winnable game. They were winning for most of the game, and they had the chances to put it to bed at home on a Tuesday. What more do you want? How much more is it going to take to pull off a win? And in the end, it was just one moment where they've switched off and they've just allowed Jack Shepherd to have a free header in the box, which obviously unacceptable. We have to mark your man. We've gone over that before, basics of defending. But they were so close, and it's just that composure, that calmness that they need to get them across the line, or maybe just that clinical edge at the other end to kill off the game so they don't have to rely on defending for their lives in the final minutes. So close, but yet so far still.
Yeah, exactly. I think they'll be really disappointed with the goal. I think with the manner of it, because Bradford didn't really look that threatening. If I'm going to be perfectly honest, I really want to go in on Bradford a little bit because, I mean, I've said obviously couple of minutes ago. This is the sort of game in which they just crumble in anyway. But I mean, they started the season okay, but they've not been that great. I think they've not won in their last 4. I don't think they've, other than MK, in which they won, they haven't won away since. They've had some really poor results on the road, losing at Harrogate, losing to Walsall, losing at Grimsby, and then again drawing at Morecambe, in which I believe this paper over the cracks. People will blame. I think there's quite a lot. If you're Bradford, I think they know where the problems are, and I think they run deeper than on the pitch. Look, Bradford are a big football club. I mean, we all know that. Probably not to, if I'm going to be nice, probably not to the extent that maybe some are making out. But for the level, they are a decent-sized football club in which I think they're, in terms of stature, they should be playing higher than League Two. But until something changes, I think it's, they can sack all the managers all they like. I do think maybe Alexander's maybe under a tad bit of pressure. I think he'll get a little bit longer yet. But it's clear that I don't really see the direction that Bradford are going in. There's been obviously talks with, about Ryan Sparks and Stephen Rupp, their owner. There's been a couple of protests in the past. I think I think they've tried and tested, I think, with anything, they've changed managers a hell of a lot of times. They've changed players quite a few times. There's been a lot of turnover. But ultimately, until something quite drastic, I believe, at the top changes, I honestly think this is what Bradford are. I think they're a mid-table side at League Two. That's my honest opinion. And yesterday was probably another result in which I feel somewhat illuminates that. Is that maybe something you think, Jay? Because I don't know where to go with Bradford, because they've been in League Two now for quite a while, and they've had that one season where they made the playoffs under Mark Hughes, but then they haven't really done anything other than that.
Yeah, it feels like they're sliding away this season as well, because they had such a good start, and now they're sliding away again. They've won 1 in 6, and I don't know where they go next, because they shouldn't change their manager, because they do that all the time and it doesn't seem to work. They're just stuck. They seem to only have one real tactic, and when that doesn't work, they have results like they're having at the minute. So they need to improve quickly and sort of climb back up the table.
I mean, look, you two know Graham Alexander. Jake probably a little bit better than what Luke, of course. But what do you think of him at the minute with Bradford? They've had a pretty difficult run of games in which they've picked up very little points. They haven't won in the last 4. They've drawn 2 and they lost 2. Is there maybe a way that he could maybe get a tune out of this Bradford side? Because they did, as I say, they did start the season, with a couple of decent wins. So I'm just not sure what you two think.
Yeah, it's really interesting because his football isn't a great watch, but it does usually get results. Obviously, it didn't work out at MK Dons, and it doesn't appear to be working out yet at Bradford. But he does need time, and I think with time, he will improve results. But he just needs to have the support of the fan base again, which hopefully he can regain and just help them climb up the table and get out of the league.
Is there anything on that you want to add, Luke?
Well, I personally think it's quite tricky to get the backing of the supporters when you play that way. Because as you said, it's not exactly entertaining. So if it's not entertaining and it's not getting results, then why would the fans back you? And I think that's kind of the problem he ran into at Dons, to be fair. Obviously, we started well. We had a couple of really good results. You think back to the opening day against Wrexham when we beat them 5-3. But then from there, it was downhill, and it was just poor result after poor result. Watching us try and hoof balls up to Mo Issa, who is not exactly the most physical profile, to say the least. There was just never any real plan there. I don't know if that's going to be the case with Bradford, because they've probably got players that are better suited to it. But at least that's kind of the stumbling block he ran into here.
I think that's the main thing. I think that as a team, I think Bradford have the players that suit Alexander quite well. I just don't know what. I think injuries have played its toll. I think you can say that. You can say that for quite a few clubs. I've said that for obviously mine, but injuries have taken its toll. I think they brought in was it Paul Huntingdon, Huntington. I can't remember. It's one of the two. I can't remember at the top of my head, but to bolster up that defence, I think they've had a couple of injury issues, especially at centre half. But I think certainly the results are quite alarming. If I'm going to be honest, and I think they've got Newport next. I think that's next Monday night. If they don't probably win that, I think they know that obviously the club's is probably stalled a little bit with their ownership. But I think if they don't pick up a result on Monday night, I can certainly see fans start to turn on Alexander. If I'm going to be honest, I mean, he's a safe pair of hands. He's a dependable pair of hands. You know what you're getting from a Graham Alexander side. It's just for one reason or another, it's just not clicking. And last night's result doesn't shock me at all. It really doesn't. If it just screamed very Bradford, they're just lucky they didn't lose it. I think they should have done, to be honest. But that's where I am with that. We'll take a quick break. We'll run through the other games. We'll quickly roll through it. We'll have a listen to how Jake enjoyed his Tuesday night when his side took on Newport. And like I said, it's a shame that Kieran's not here because it really could have been. It really could have been quite something. That, and we'll look at the other games very shortly. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Forte Fever for the second part of the podcast. We'll head straight into Salford. Obviously, Jake's team. Jake's had a couple of pods away now. He's coming back to a 3-1 defeat away at Newport County. I mean, Newport won their last game against Crewe. They were banging form. They picked up a really nice victory there. Salford, I can't remember actually. If I'm going to be honest, Jake, you could probably put me on that, but I don't think he probably cares. I think it's more the case of this one. You were seething last night. Some of the stuff you were messaging in the chat. It sounds like you've calmed down a little bit. That's what you said at the start. What's the sort of consensus now? Maybe looking back at it.
Yeah, it was just a very, very bad game from our point of view. Obviously, we let Kyle Hudlin, who's got a reputation for being 6'9" striker, one of the tallest in England. They have a corner and he just runs across and gets the first contact relatively unmarked and just heads it home, which is just really poor start and defending. And then our player falls over the ball and we go 2-0 down. And it just gets worse and worse pretty much. We just never really challenged them. And then we scored a goal at the end, but it just didn't really mean anything because they had a third with someone scoring with their first touch off the bench, which is always great. There was just no effort, it seemed. There was just no cohesion, and obviously we've had one of the highest turnovers of teams, so obviously it's going to take time. But when you have a performance like that, it's just, surely they know how to pass the ball to each other by now. It was so disconnected everywhere, which is something that Coramson did make a note of on the post-match interview, but it was just terrible, really.
What do you really sort of put it mainly down to? Because we know that Salford have an issue themselves scoring goals, a little bit like Tranmere. What have you maybe put it down to? If sort of like the start, was it? What have you sort of made of it? I mean, sitting 20th at the minute. What have you made of it?
It's just going forward because we've conceded 9 goals, which isn't bad compared to a lot of the teams that are in our position. Most of them have conceded between like 12 and 19. So defensively, we've been actually all right, which is like the reverse of last season. But going forward, there just doesn't seem to be any presence, which obviously when you lose Matt Smith to go from anyone else really, it's going to be quite a big change. But there's nothing to like play off when we go long. So everything just keeps going back at our defence. It's quite worrying, really.
Yeah, and I think, that's probably one word I'd say, worrying. Especially with what sounds like how poor Salford were. I mean, they've got AFC Wimbledon next. Obviously, they've been fresh. I say a little bit fresh. I mean, like I said, they played Newcastle in a week, but they haven't played a league game for a little bit of time now. So they'll be looking to get back get back at it really. And then we obviously, Grimsby, we go to you next week in the league as well. Hopefully to make it 3 wins in a row. That's unbelievable if that happens. But no, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I didn't expect a hell of a lot from Salford this year, and I think so far it's sort of proven a little bit. I didn't think it'd be like this, though, if I'm going to be honest, because there's some players there that look good, really good on paper. Just not. It just seems like the case that they're not really performing at the top end at the minute. I mean, you mentioned about Carl Robinson. I think is he? Yeah, there's just a couple of things just going on in which I'm really just not sure about Salford at the minute. Quick word on Newport there, Luke. They've been a mixed bag. I think they've had some good wins, some poor defeats. They're certainly doing better than what I thought they'd be doing at the minute.
Yeah, no, I mean that pretty much exactly that. They've pulled off results that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to. To be fair, this wasn't one of them. I did expect Newport to run away with this one a little bit. I mean, looking at it statistically, they haven't had much of the ball, but when they have had it, they've made it count. They've been clinical with their chances. They're testing the keeper. They're testing the defence. And sometimes that's all you need to do at this level because, these players aren't world class. They're going to make mistakes. Sometimes all you have to do is ask the question. And to be fair, on Salford's part, I think that's probably part of the problem. I think the tempo is probably very slow at the minute because possession football can be when it's not going right. And then you just not actually testing the keeper. I think it was 2 shots on target in that particular game. But like I said, in Newport's terms, I think they can be happy with that result. Just so on Tuesday, you take it and head into the weekend.
Yeah, I think they could be quite happy with the result. They could be quite happy, I think, with the somewhat start of the season, as much as been a little bit inconsistent at times, coupled due to circumstance. But it's clear to see that, I mean, Kieran's mentioned it a few times, they've got a model with what obviously their ownership is going down and they're following it. I mean, it sort of seems to be the case for quite a few clubs. Newport's was quite interesting. There was a lot of questions asked of them, pre-season, heading into the campaign, whether... Because there was a lot of inexperience in that squad. I still think there is, if I'm going to be honest. There's probably not a lot compared to other teams. I mean, compare us to them. I don't think we're too dissimilar. I think we've got a lot of. I think we've got quite a few more players actually. There's got quite a bit of EFL experience, but are still at a very good age. I think there's only 2 players in our squad that are age 30 or over. So we've got a pretty young squad as it is. Newport do have a very young squad. It's just whether they can obviously keep it up throughout the campaign, which will be the telling point. But I think they could be pretty pleased with their start. I think there's a lot of predictions of them to go down. I think I predicted them to go down actually, alongside Accrington. They're doing much better than what I thought they'd be, if I'm going to be honest. But it certainly looks like at the moment, it's certainly at the part of the season now in which nearly 10 games in, the table is starting to take shape a little bit of where teams could be, and there's still obviously a long way to go, but it looks like Newport will be absolutely fine from looking at it. But I'll come back to you back at the end of April when they've got relegated and Kieran starts crying that he has to go in National League Natter. But no, we'll let that when it comes. I mean, I've just mentioned Accrington Stanley just there. Another side that are without a win this season. Went to Cheltenham yesterday, lost to Cheltenham. They were winning for a period and they lost it. I mean, for Cheltenham, I think it was probably a much needed result. I think a couple of questions have been asked about Mike Flynn, especially after the Fleetwood defeat at the weekend. There were certainly a few questions going around, with the start of the football, and the fact that they've not had the best results. I mean, they picked up some all right results this season, but probably not so the best. But I mean, we've mentioned it a few times by Accrington. Although they played the game less than Morecambe, they played 9, and Morecambe have played 9 compared to Accrington's 8. At least with Morecambe, you can certainly see where the problem, where it just seems like a little bit of a matter of time. But like I'm not sure I can say the same for Accrington. I really do. Unless something changes quite drastically, then it's a big worry. I don't think their squad is anywhere near up to it. I don't think the manager is anywhere near up to it. And I think I alluded to in the when I was talking about Morecambe, they play Morecambe next. Already, that seems absolutely huge, their next game. We're saying it at this part of the season, but I generally think that's massive for them. It's massive for Morecambe as well, but for Accrington as well, it's absolutely huge. yeah, I'm just really not convinced with anything about Accrington at the minute.
Yeah, and you'd be right to say that, in my opinion. I mean, to be fair, it is a lovely finish for the opening goal. I think it was Costello.
Yeah, Derek Costello, I believe. Yeah, really nice goal, actually.
But they had more chances, and they didn't put the game to bed. And if we're being honest, we're talking about winnable games. This was one of them. This was one you needed to see something. You needed to see them actually go out there and, really take the game to Cheltenham. They've not done that, and then they've gone and been punished for it, which was, always going to happen. You're away. You have to put the game to bed, otherwise the home team will just eventually rally, and that's what they did. So for Accrington's perspective, it's just really, really, really poor. And as you said, they're now going into another, what we're going to have to call it a 6-pointer already, I think. And, they have to get something there. Absolutely have to.
They have to. If they lose that, I've never been that convinced with Accrington Stanley going into the season. There's been quite, they've lost a lot of players in the summer. They've obviously, I think, they're still feeling the effects of John Coleman going. John Doolan was always, I think, a risky appointment, always risky, and it's just not paid off at all. It can maybe be unlucky with a couple of results, but eventually, I just don't think they've been quite good enough at all, to be honest. You can see what Morecambe are trying to do. I don't get that feeling with Accrington. For Cheltenham, I feel like that was a much needed win. A couple of question marks have been asked on Michael Flynn from their supporters, last couple of games. It was certainly a winnable game for him, and that's what they claimed 3 points. It wasn't easy with them going behind, but I'm not sure what you think of Cheltenham, Jack, because I think at the minute this is sort of where I sort of expected them to be.
Yeah, it's where we expected them to be because they've got a lot of experience and not many people stand out in their team on paper. They've got a lot of experienced players that almost just waiting to step up and just sort of keep them in that area and just have no real relegation concerns and probably won't have any promotion concerns either, but just have a steady season and probably won't be the worst thing for them, obviously, after last season and everything that happened, to just have a steady season.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned about player turnovers. Cheltenham have had one of the bigger ones, if not the biggest. Obviously, Mike Flynn coming in the summer, experience at this level in League Two, a very successful spell at Newport compared to not two great spells at Walsall and Swindon, respectively. But I just wasn't that sure. It just seemed a very safe pair of hands, but nothing at the minute. I feel like Mike Flynn's career trajectory has gone a little bit downhill since leaving Newport. He's had those two jobs, albeit Swindon are a little bit, dare I say, basket case at the minute. But Walsall just didn't work out either. Cheltenham, I just feel maybe suits him a little bit more, but he's certainly brought in a lot of players that I think he knows well. There's a lot of, as you've alluded to, there's a lot of experience in that squad. I just don't think there'll be in that much relegation bother. I don't think they'll be pushing right at the top end. I just think this is what they are after a difficult season last year. It took them. They've already done better than what they started with last year. What did it take them? Was it 11 games? Didn't they score in? They didn't score in like the first, was it 10, 11 games or something last year? Or something daft like that. They're already doing much better than that. But no, it was always going to, I think it was always going to be a big ask for Cheltenham to really do much this year, if I was going to be honest. And it certainly looks to be the case, albeit a good result. I have to say, certainly a much needed one, with a couple of poor results in there. Doncaster, they returned to winning ways, winning at home by beating Barrow by 1-0, a late goal from Harry Clifton. I say late goal, it was like in 9 minutes. It's so written in the stars. He's scoring a winner on Saturday. I can't be. If he does, you will not hear me on this podcast at the weekend. Because that's the last thing I want to see. But a couple of, iffy results. I think for opposition, it's probably a good time to play Doncaster. That they have been pretty good at home, however. It didn't seem pretty by any stretch, but winning by the one goal. It looked like they just about edged it in the game, and they've got the 3 points in which they've gone 3 games without winning. missing players. I believe Molyneux was missing, and I think their defender Anderson. I think I found out that he didn't elbow him. I think he sort of swore, and I don't know. I could be wrong, but I saw that he was charged. I think today actually, but a much needed win after a couple of potentially shoddy results to home. So against a good side in Barrow as well, in which they've had a lot of travelling to do over the last week, heading to Chelsea, then to Gillingham, and then to Doncaster. It's a good result for Doncaster, isn't it? It's a win. You get them back up and running.
Well, yeah, exactly that. It's I actually think they probably controlled that game relatively well. They probably had the better chances, and if anything, the only thing I'm being critical of is the fact that they've not scored more, because they are at home. You'd hope that they'd be able to put a couple more in, but at the same time, it is a clean sheet and 3 points against an informed side, and sometimes it really is just a case of grinding out a result, especially when it is like your Tuesday night fixtures. It's not necessarily the same atmosphere as it would be on a weekend game. I think all in all, they can be happy with that. It's a return to winning ways.
Yeah, exactly. I think they needed 3 points, and they certainly got it. Barrow. I mean, we have said that they have done a hell of a lot of travelling because Barrow is it's miles away from pretty much anywhere, to be quite honest. The fixtures have been kind to them in terms of travelling. I mean, they did have that trip to Stamford Bridge, which wasn't too bad. I think they'd have taken that every day of the week. But I think it was always going to be actually a big ask for them to take anything from Gillingham and then at Doncaster. As much as they started the season well, they've got Cheltenham next at home. I think that's a great chance to return to winning ways. What have you made of Barrow so far? I think because they've certainly been good, haven't they? I think they've just hit a couple of tough games in which they lost at Gills, and then this one at Doncaster conceding quite. It looked like Clifton was unmarked actually. The goal, I think, from a Barrow standpoint, looked quite poor. Just not sure what you think of them.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. They've had a lot of travelling. They've had a really good start overall. Obviously, lost the last two, which are games you'd expect them to lose, probably. The goal that they conceded against Doncaster, they will be annoyed with because he was just unmarked in the middle of the box and he'd be doing well to not score. Obviously, they got Cheltenham next. It's a perfect chance for them to bounce back and get back on the winning train.
Yeah, of course, and that's something I think they need to do now. Back on home soil, it's a great opportunity for all them. Fair pots to any Barrow fan that has gone to all three of those games, by the way, because that is some mileage right there. It has to be said. But yeah, Doncaster, needed it. They've got it. They control the game pretty well, and they've got 3 points out of it. It sets up for obviously them coming to Blundell Park to face us on Saturday for an early kickoff. That'll be tasty. I'm really looking forward to that game. Just hope they don't batter us 5-1 again. It's either, as I say, that Clifton winner is going to be the death of me. Notts County 2-0 winners away at Carlisle United. Mike Williamson lost his first home game in charge of the club on the Saturday, losing to us, Grimsby. He won his first game in charge at Swindon, 2-0 win, and then his side have fallen to a 2-0 defeat to the Magpies, who are going really well at the minute. Osana Jatta and Scott Robertson with the goal. I have to point out, if you've seen the highlights, go and watch it and go and have a listen to Notts County's second goal. You can just hear a bloke just screaming his head off, saying all sorts of, let's just say, lovely language. I found that really amusing. I really go and suggest you go and check that out. I mean, I did see the goals in pretty it's Route 1 stuff from Notts County, which is not something you probably say about them for Jatta's goal. Straight ball from Bass straight to Jatta, and then Robertson with the finish there. And Carlisle, looking at the stats, Carlisle, had a hell of a lot more shots than Notts County, but ultimately it's the clinical edge that Notts County have, and they've claimed 3 points again on the road because of it.
Oh yeah, no, it's a really solid result. As you said, they were clinical with their finishing, but equally their defending, for the most part, was pretty good. There were times where Bass was called on, but he was there to make the saves, and he's pulled off a couple of fantastic saves in that game as well. And to be fair, Carlisle were really coming at them for a lot of that game, and I mean, in proper Williamson fashion, they've won the game on XG, just not in the actual match.
Yeah.
But no, from a Notts perspective, that's a very, very good win away. Clean sheet, couple of goals, solid group defending. What more could you want, really?
Yeah, I mean, good Notts County defending is something that we're starting to say a little bit more nowadays compared to what we were last season, of course. I did see a bit of a save package from Alex Bass. I think he's one of the best goalkeepers in this league. I was really impressed with him at AFC Wimbledon last season, and he looked a real nice signing for Notts County, and he's certainly repaying the faith there. 2 home defeats for Carlisle. I truly believed with Williams it was probably going to take a hell of a long. I think will take quite a while for Williamson to shape what he wants to do at Carlisle. I think the ambition's there at the club for one reason or another. It's this season so far is just not going their way at all. I mean, it's the first time you've come on since the appointment. What did you make of the Mike Williamson appointment, Jake? Because I mean, we've heard Luke's thoughts to death about it. I was just wondering what you get your views, because it looked quite an interesting one at the time. He looked like he probably could have been under pressure a little bit at MK Dons. I mean, I think MK released that statement that they weren't thinking about sacking him anyway, and they just paid their release clause from the sounds of things. What did you make about the appointment, and what sort of somewhat needs to happen with him during his spell at the club?
Yeah, it's an interesting appointment because his football needs time to develop, and I question whether Carlisle have the ability to give him time with the situation they're in, and with the culture of the club in the past 2 years, pretty much they've conceded a lot of goals, and you can't imagine the players are actually enjoying their football. So then when you have someone that comes in and is saying, right, it's going to take time, this is going to have to happen, I'm not sure whether that would go down well, because they just want to win games, and if they're having all this XG and all the possession and it's not leading to anything, then there's potentially a lot of pressure going to be put on him in quite a short space of time.
I think you just mentioned it there pretty much. I think they've got such a deep losing culture at the minute that it's going to take a hell of a lot of effort, I think, for any manager to turn around, let alone him. And like I said, I do believe there's ambition at the club. I really do, with their American ownership. But yeah, I mean, you can't keep saying that he's won games on XG, because ultimately, it's goals that win your games, and points is what really matters. Although I don't think he really blamed it up. I don't know. I could be wrong. I didn't really listen to his interview online. I did on Saturday, where we had 0.04 XG. We still won 3-2. Yeah, that mentality is hard to shift. It'll take some doing. But yeah, it just seemed a really interesting appointment at the time. But ultimately, I think at this stage at the minute, they're 9 games in. They're 22nd in the league. They have lost 6 out of their last 7 games. It's not a good look. It's really not. And I really didn't see this coming. I don't think many people did. Many people looked like they predicted to have Carlisle to have a decent season, but it was one I think they needed to start well. They haven't, and Paul Simpson's lost his job because of it. Time will tell whether if Williamson is the right man. It's one that they need to be really patient with, because his ideas are there, I think, but it needs a clear structure to really produce that. I don't think Carlisle particularly have that at the minute on the pitch. I mean, off the pitch, I think they do, but off it, I'm not sure. I'm not sure at the minute. I think it'll take a good couple of transfer windows at least to really shape up what he wants to do. But they've got to start getting some wins pretty quickly, I feel, because what did I say? 6 defeats the last 7. It's just not a good look at all. And ultimately, I did expect more from them so far this year. So it's somewhat a little bit worrying for them, if I'm going to be honest. A couple more games to wrap through. Let's touch on Bromley. I mean, they've not had the best of times at the minute. They're struggling to buy a win. I think from what I saw yesterday with their game against Chesterfield, I think with the goals they scored was more Bromley, if you know what I mean. It was more, they worked it really well, and they looked a threat from like crosses and set pieces and all that. But done by a 2-2 draw, 2 Will Grigg goals. That second one from their keeper. Is it a foul? Maybe not. It looks pretty soft, but it also looks pretty poor as well at the same time. It looked a bit of a mess that. It just seems like Bromley at the minute, as much as Chesterfield and MK Dons, I think will be decent points eventually. At the minute, they're struggling to buy a win. I think it's probably safe to say they've got Fleetwood away next. That's a tough game, and then they go to Walsall. So they've got 2 tough away games coming. I don't think Woodman's in any sort of trouble. He's got a hell of a lot of credit in the bank. I don't think he'll be gone there for quite a long time yet. It's just getting that win. I mean, it did look like they played all right against Chesterfield. I mean, the Spirates had a lot more of the ball than what they did, but it's probably to be expected. I mean, they had those. Like I said, we said to someone the other day, had those 2 wins at the start of the campaign, and I think they've really struggled. I think they've really learned the harsh reality of League 2 football in these last few weeks, and they're just struggling to maybe just get that win, to maybe inspire a little bit of confidence at the minute. It's not for the lack of trying, because they have picked up some decent draws in there, but they're at a point now in which I think they just need a win, if I'm going to be honest.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I think they'll be frustrated with this game in particular. I mean, as you mentioned, that's a mistake from the goalkeeper. I mean, whether it was a foul or not, it's almost irrelevant. Why have you put yourself in a position for that to happen in the first place? Why are you trying to wait for a ball to trickle into your box to collect it when you've got a striker running at you? Just clear your lines. Like the most basic thing, if there's any risk at all, just get rid. Especially when you're a side that's not like possession based. Like, why are you trying to hold on to it? There's no reason to be trying to mess around with it there. And for the other goal, it was just poor marking. Simple as that. I will say on the positive side, I think it's Olamola. Hopefully, haven't butchered the pronunciation there. But really, really good header for that one. But they just need to be able to finish off a result, as you've been saying there. They have quality in moments, but not over extended periods of time. And I think that's where their problem is at the minute. They need to be able to sustain a good performance.
Yeah, of course. Another goal for Michael Cheek as well, something I didn't mention. I mean, his goal scoring qualities are clear to see. His 6th goal in 9 appearances at EFL level this season, which is a really good return, but ultimately it's points that they need. I mean, they're getting a few there and there, but they need that win. Quick note on Chesterfield. I mean, the basis of a very good squad is there. They're certainly picking up points. They might feel like they could have had maybe a couple more wins. It does seem a little bit inconsistent at the minute. Their last 5, they've won, lost, draw, won, draw. Against some decent teams. I mean, they beat Grimsby. I don't think they should have done, to be honest. I think it was probably a draw, that at the very least. They lost to Port Vale. They look a pretty good side. Cheltenham they drew with. Yeah, they beat Doncaster 3-0, which is a really good result from them the other day. And then this one against Bromley. I still believe they'll come really good. I really do. The squad's there. The manager's there. I think they just set it up for it. But they just need to start turning a couple more of those maybe draws into wins, if I'm going to be honest. And nowhere near the finished article, but I think they'll get there. I'm not sure what you think.
Yeah, the problem is definitely backing up results, because they've won 3 games, and whenever they win, they just seem to drop points in the next game, which is far from ideal. They've got Will Gregg scoring 2 yesterday. Paddy Madden got his first goal on Saturday, so they've certainly got the attackers. We know it's just keeping that defence secure and not conceding those poor goals and backing up those wins, because everyone knows that they're probably going to be in the playoffs at least. So once they get that run going, I feel like they will be hard to stop, but they'll need to start it sooner rather than later, probably.
Yeah, and playoffs around there, or if not at least challenging, is probably what really should be their expectation. I think it is. I don't think there's any secret that they have a pretty strong squad. They maybe have spent a little bit compared to some other sides. I mean, Paddy Madden, as you've mentioned, Shea Dunkley's a fantastic player. A couple of others. I mean, Dylan Markande looks like he's doing okay. I mean, they've already got Armando Dobra as well. Will Grigg scoring goals, which I always thought he could do in this Chesterfield side at this level. I think they'll get there. It's just sort of when everything just clicks together. I mean, next couple of games, I do look at it. They've got Walsall, fresh off the back of a 6-2 defeat. And then they've got Notts County. That's a huge game. Local, somewhat East Midlands derby around that's pretty local. So a couple of tasty fixtures there actually for Chesterfield, and they'll be looking at that, thinking they can maybe potentially get a few points out of that. I don't think they should be scared of Notts. Neither should Walsall, to be honest. I still think they'll be there in and abouts, but it's just when that will happen is probably my question at the minute. The final game, we've actually rattled through these pretty quickly. I mean, a little bit more somewhat me just going in the games like, we scored this goal, we scored that one. I mean, Port Vale. I mean, they've been on really good form as of late. I think 5 unbeaten, 3 wins, 2 draws. Against a Colchester side in which I've always believed there was another gear for them to go to, but at the minute, I mean, especially after their defeat to Walsall on Saturday, I'm starting to maybe think that a little bit. But I think I just think it just seems, it's a draw. I'll be honest, I didn't really see much of this. It looked like Colchester defended pretty well up until that goal. I mean, it scored. I think it was quite late their goal actually. In the 90th minute, Samson Tavide with it. It was Jesse Deborah getting the goal for Port Vale. It just seems a fair result looking at it.
Oh yeah, honestly, I'd agree with that entirely. I actually predicted that this would be quite a high-scoring one. You've got 2 teams that have at times been fantastic with their attacking play and then just terrible at defending. So I was almost impressed, really, with the fact that it finished only 1-1. But then you see how late the goal was for Colchester, and actually not so convinced with Port Vale. They should have finished it off. You're at home. I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll be a decent point for both sides, but it felt like an opportunity wasted, really, for both sides as well. Like we were saying with some of the teams towards the bottom, dropping points where they perhaps shouldn't. This was one a bit further up the table where, again, there was an opportunity to really do something, and I think that's been wasted there.
Yeah, I do think Colchester will be happy there too. I think the 90th minute equaliser away from home. I don't think you can really ever get too disheartened with that. But Port Vale, I think they've had a good start. Pretty much expected them where I thought they'd be. I mean, I think we mentioned on the when we ran the League Two managers. I think there was a couple of contrasting thoughts. I think on Darren Moore in particular. But there's no denying that he's had a very good career in management at a good level of football. I mean, he's managed in a championship quite recently, albeit not the most successful spell with Huddersfield. Took Sheffield Wednesday up from League One. I mean, he's a man that's probably seen it, and he's done it, and he's done it. I think it's probably fair to say. Port Vale have a good squad. Some really nice players in there. Lots of quality. Same with Colchester, in which I'm I'm just baffled by Colchester at the minute. Although I think if probably from what I'm seeing, I think if you'd ask Colchester fan, I think if you'd offered them mid-table, I think where they have been for the past couple of seasons, they'd probably take it. That's just my honest opinion. As for Port Vale, I think they've got that intention of them going up. I think with the squad they have, they've certainly got all the capabilities for it. But I feel that for them to concede so late yesterday must be a little bit of a kick in the teeth when they're so close to victory.
Yeah, they'll be disappointed, but they're still 5 games unbeaten and they've won 3 of their last 5, so there's plenty of positives for them. There won't be a massive overreaction as much as they will be disappointed. They're sat in 7th, they've got Notts County up next, so that is the perfect way to just build on what has been a really good run for them. Yeah,
I mean, they're a side that are brimming with confidence at the minute. I think it's probably fair to say, with their results. As you've mentioned, Notts County, that's a big game already, that. And then they've got MK Dons after that. So there's 2 pretty big games there. I mean, if you want to go a little bit further, they play Fleetwood after that, in which, I've been quite high praise of Fleetwood past couple of weeks. So it's not an easy running by any stretch. But one thing that they'll certainly have will be confidence, with this little unbeaten run that they have been on. But yeah, it does seem, a draw fair for both parties. It looks like, I mean, Port Vale are in a decent position at the minute, sitting 7th. Colchester not far, I mean, the 15th, they're 5 points adrift from them. I think this is probably now the time in which we probably do start, as I think I mentioned earlier in the pod, we start to look at the table and we sort of look at where we think teams might be. Just a couple of questions just to end it on, just on the table alone. Any shocks in there for you? Any surprises so far in the league table? I think you probably look at Walsall and Barrow 3rd and 4th respectively. I certainly didn't see that coming. Neither really did I see Carlisle at 22nd at this stage. Still a lot of football left to play, but we're pretty much nearly at the 10-game mark. I was just wondering what you think.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Walsall and Barrow both been up there. I mean, the way we predicted Barrow to be right near the bottom, and they're right near the top. That's not gone well. If you could please get worse, that would be very helpful. Thank you. And to be fair, I also want to give credit to Grimsby and to Newport for, they're just outside playoffs, both of them at this stage. I don't think any of us had them to be quite that high up, and we have literal fans of these clubs as hosts here. So I think both clubs have done particularly well, and then as you say, Carlisle on the other side of things really, really underperforming. It's going to take a lot to turn things around. I think they'll get there. I don't think they'll necessarily be in the same sort of trouble that a Swindon, a Morecambe, or an Accrington might be, but they're not in a great position at the minute, and it may be a little bit longer before they actually drag themselves out of that. And then finally, I'm going to mention my own team. We've definitely underperformed. I'm hoping that's now going to change under Lindsay. Obviously, remains to be seen. We're only 2 games in with him, but I'm cautiously optimistic at this stage.
Yeah, I certainly. That's one team I forgot to mention that MK Dons. I think they've been quite underwhelming so far, but hopefully now is the start of something under Scott Lindsay. I mean, good win yesterday, of course, but it's now backing it up with a few more results. But I do expect MK to start climbing that table a little bit more eventually. Jake, any surprises there for you at all?
Yeah, one of the surprises is obviously Tranmere being 17th, because I loaded up our predictions at one point during the podcast, and we predicted Tranmere to be 8th, which is a huge surprise and does not look very good at the minute. So hopefully they can turn it around. Otherwise, our predictions look very bad.
Yeah, I'm not liking that one at the minute. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure they probably will to that extent, to be honest. Especially with their goal scoring problems that they seem to have, and they're, I think, lack of just overall quality. I think at times, I'm just not sure with Tranmere. But yeah, there's a couple of surprises in there. I mean, seeing us, just outside the playoffs is something. I mean, I didn't expect after 9-10 games. And I think we've had a very difficult start on paper with the team, with some of the teams we've played, with the injuries. I think that's a terrific start from us. I really do. Newport have surprised me a little bit. Carlisle, as mentioned, I've mentioned MK and how I think they've been quite underwhelming so far. But and then obviously there's Barrow and Walsall, who have so far exceeded any expectations that I have from them, particularly Barrow. They've had really solid starts themselves. But look, it's all good looking at the table now. As much as it started to take shape, which I believe it is at this stage, there's still a lot of football left to play, of course. So I think it's probably a good time to wrap up this episode. Thank you guys for listening, as always. If you did enjoy, make sure you go and download the podcast on wherever you get your podcast from. Is it Spotify, Apple's? I think it's Apple. I really need to check that. I feel like I say it every week, but make sure you go and download it and listen to it on the stream platforms. Make sure you go and follow our Twitter page. I am not calling it X. Elon can get to fuck. Make sure you go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Listen to some of the other stuff, including that David Artell podcast. I think probably a good time for Grimsby Town fans in particular to go and listen to that. With the run of form that that the club have been on quite recently. So make sure you go and listen to that if you haven't done so already. We should be back on Sunday, Monday, whenever this podcast goes out, to cover this weekend's fixtures. Hopefully we'll have Kieran back for that one. He did message in the chat, actually. I think he's just been caught up with a lot of stuff. But like I said, I was really disappointed because he could have had some right digs at Salford today, and I think it would have been a good class. So Jake's been spared from that potential, I say, sort of embarrassment's not. Yeah, fuck it, embarrassment. Lads, is there anything you two want to add before we go?
Yeah, just thank you guys for tuning in, and obviously be sure to get your comments in on various socials. We all tend to be relatively active, Tell us how right we are or how delusional we are or whatever it is. Just, it's great to see you guys involved and listening to our stuff. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're getting closer to 300 subscribers now on YouTube. So hopefully this and hopefully next podcast can tip us over to 300. But thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in on Sunday, Monday, whatever day it'll go out.
Yeah, of course. Any help towards that will be greatly appreciated. Yeah, and as these two said, make sure you give us your thoughts. Look, I've stated throughout this podcast, particularly this episode, I've not really taken that much of a keen eye on the other games in terms of like watching the Hearts. I mean, it did sound like I was talking. It could have talked like I sounded not. I talked nonsense for the Port Vale game in particular, but you could be the judge of that. You could, probably educate me a little bit more than what I did to myself. Still on cloud 9 with 3 wins in a row. I'm gonna try and enjoy it as best I can. I mean, I'm trying to not get too high with it, but it's one of those where you've got to sort of enjoy it the best you can because especially last year, how bad we were. There's certainly some cause to maybe be a little bit excited to where we're heading with this project. Maybe with MK Dons, probably not so much with Salford. Perhaps, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But thank you guys for listening. We will see you on the next one. Until then, take care.